What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another solo pay-per-view recap with your boy, Brandon Tanguma. Yep, if you're listening to this over on the Bulletcast station, this would be considered an under-the-radar episode. If you're listening to this on the Curveballs and Chair Shots feed, well, this is just Brandon rambling about wrestling for the next hour. This is not just a solo pay-per-view recap about one pay-per-view. It is a solo recap of, I guess, one pay-per-view and two PLEs, because, you know, we got to use the cult speak when we talk about WWE shows. But we're going to go over two PLEs and then one television special. So 4 shows in total. I'm already losing count of how many there were this week. But yes, there was a ton of shows, tons of wrestling was on this past weekend. A little late to the party. Recording this on Monday. Was going to do it maybe after All In, but I was like, you know what? Let's save it. Let's just talk about all the shows at once. So here we are to talk about, we're going to go over All In, obviously, Saturday night's main event, NXT, Great American Bash. We'll touch on that for a little bit, as well as Evolution 2. But we will kind of go in order of how I watched these shows. And the first show I watched was the biggest show in many ways than one, and that would be AEW's All In event taking place in Arlington, Texas, at Globe Life Field. Attendance, we don't have a true number on it, but seems as though it was a pretty good house, well above 25,000, so between the 25 to 30,000 range. They made it look really good. They had a big stage. They had good lighting. They were able to kind of, shoot it in such a way to where you couldn't tell that, there was like 15,000 empty seats in the stadium, but it did look very good. And I thought AEW, shot it very nicely. So let's just jump on into it. There was the pre-show. I didn't really watch the pre-show. I did see some stuff, watch the Big Boom AJ stuff on Twitter. There's some clips of Trent Beretta pushing down Big Justice and all that other good fun stuff. I came in right at the tail end of the FTR Outrunners match. And, match was fine. Shout out the Outrunners with their
motherfucking Newports
outfits. Great, great look from them. FTR wins in about 16-10. It was fine. They did have a really good match last week or 2 weeks ago over on Collision, and this match wasn't set to be anything spectacular, but it was setting up something that was happening later in the show, which we will talk about. So hopefully there's a lot of stuff going on. This is apparently, according to the internet, with the internet's never wrong, the longest wrestling pay-per-view of all time, surpassing the infamous WrestleMania 35 over in New York in 2019. If we're going to add the pre-show, it was 8 hours. If we don't add the pre-show, it was 6 hours. And, I mean, this is just... I understand this is AEW's like equivalent to WrestleMania, so it is their biggest show of the year. But that's still way too long. They had the earlier start time. They started at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. So maybe that gave Tony Khan more leeway in his mind to put on more stuff. And, we talk about, if you listen to these AEW recaps I do, for the most part, all the shows, all the pay-per-views are way too long. They're always pushing about 4 hours, maybe even 5 hours. And that's even, if you don't add the pre-show to it as well. But this one, I think, was on the kind of extreme end, but the stuff that needed to deliver did deliver. So I'm not as harsh in like saying this was a terrible show and, oh my God, how can it be? Because like 35, outside of like the Becky Lynch stuff, which that match, the triple threat match, the main event, was definitely hampered by the long show because the crowd was dead and the crowd was, not as amped up for it. And luckily for the main event, there were points where they were a little quiet, but they were able to kind of get up for the very end of the AEW main event. And maybe that's just because the show was earlier compared to it being well past like 1 o'clock or midnight in New York time for the WrestleMania show. But let's just march through it in chronological order. So the opening match was the Ops, Katsuyori Shibata, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Samoa Joe defending their trios titles against Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, and Gabe Kidd. This one went 14-10. Perfectly fine opener. People like the Ops, they get a kick out of Boo and the Death Riders. This match was a late addition, so you could say this match didn't need to be on the card if we are kind of trimming down matches and kind of trying to shave off a good 2 hours of this show. This match definitely would have been on the cutting room floor. But the Ops ended up getting the win here after Samoa Joe hit a muscle buster on Wheeler Yuta. And the big story in the match was after the fact, where the Death Riders were able to incapacitate Samoa Joe, put him in a chair and kicked it. So then Samoa Joe did the whole stretcher job, so he was written out. So it was kind of clear in the moment that this was kind of setting up the story for the main event, to where the Death Riders were kind of taking out some of Hangman Page's allies, because the Ops had kind of come to his defense a few times during Dynamite and other collisions, stuff like that. So clearly the Ops would have been involved in the main event, but since they took out Samoa Joe, they needed some help from some other people, which we will talk about a little bit later. But yeah, match was perfectly fine. Nothing too crazy there. Then we had the Men's Casino Gauntlet with the winner challenging for a future world title shot. And in order of participants, well, I guess we just jump straight to it. MJF won. He pinned Roderick Strong at 34-55. And frankly, I think this was probably the worst match on the card. It went, as I said, nearly 35 minutes. And I would say maybe 10 minutes of that match actually kind of mattered and the crowd was kind of into. Yeah, just way too long. Overindulgent. A lot of points in the match where... I'm just going to read off all the participants. So Mark Briscoe, MJF, Ricochet, Bandito, Takeshita, Mystico, Josh Alexander, Anthony Bowens, Roderick Strong, Brody King, Juice Robinson, Kota Ibushi, The Beast Mortos, and Max Caster. No real surprises. Shout out Juice Robinson. He made his return clean shaven, still got the long hair, but a new look for him. The Guns came out in the match to help out with Juice Robinson. So those are really the only surprises in the match, so it wasn't elevated by any of those kind of, surprise moments like last year where they had Nigel McGuinness make his return to wrestling. Everything was just pretty straightforward. A lot of these guys, most of these guys, frankly, outside of MJF, are mid to low card guys. Ricochet kind of could possibly fight for a world title shot, especially if, you're trying to build up some heels for Hangman. But this is not a strong class for world title challengers, and for this to go 34-55 was just absolutely just indulgent and just insane that it went that long. Definitely low point for me of the show, and my least favorite match of the night. God bless Mystico. He came out and they tried to do the little sing-along entrance that was phenomenal that they did in Mexico, because the Mexican fans in Arena Mexico actually knew the song. But frankly, I don't know the song. And it seems as though a lot of people in Texas did not know the song as well, because they were really trying to play it up, and Mystico was playing to the crowd, telling them to sing and sing and sing, and maybe there's a few hundred people, 1,000 people there that were singing it, but majority did not know it. It is not Kaze ni Nare like Minoru Suzuki. It's not a phrase that is easily learnable from non speakers of that language. So for them to expect 20,000+ people to sing a Spanish song was a little insane for them to think that was going to play out. But yeah, MJF just basically hit a stolen pin finish on Roderick Strong after Mark Briscoe hit a Jade Driller on him. It's kind of hard to kind of go in depth on this match because it was 35 minutes, but not a whole lot really happened. Then another kind of low point of the show, but for different reasons. Breaking news happened right before the show started. Adam Cole was not cleared to compete, so he had to vacate the TNT title. And Adam Cole came out visibly emotional. He talked about how he's not in the right mindset to say if this is a retirement or not, but he has to vacate the title, has to go away for a little bit. Did not say explicitly what is the issue. There's been some rumors and speculation that it could possibly be another concussion. People have showcased that apron bomb that he clipped his head on the ring side, but he wrestled on Thursday for Collision, so clearly it wasn't that spot that happened a few weeks ago. People are pointing to a possible kind of clothesline where he landed high up on his head. I mean, I don't know exactly when it happened, but it does seem very. It sounds legit. It sounds like this could possibly be the end for Adam Cole, which is very sad to see. I mean, in my preview of the Adam Cole Kyle Fletcher match, I was kind of talking about how the Adam Cole run in AEW has definitely not panned out to what it was supposed to be, and it, frankly, it's been basically just injuries, and Adam Cole's body has kind of given out on him, unfortunately. And kind of the stuff he has done when he was healthy, like the MJF stuff 2 years ago, was frankly not great. Kind of sent the company in a downward spiral that seemingly they have kind of climbed back out of. But yeah, the Adam Cole stuff, the Adam Cole speech was a tough watch. It was sad and unfortunate. Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong was there as well. They kind of hugged him, and they were emotional as well because they probably know much more than what's been let on in the public. So T's and P's to Adam Cole. If he's able to return, I'd be glad to see him wrestle again. But also, I don't want him to risk his health and his future, because concussions, especially chronic concussions, are nothing to mess with. That being said, they did make this match a fatal four-way, adding Daniel Garcia, Dustin Rhodes, and Sammy Guevara into the match against Kyle Fletcher. So 3 baby faces against 1 heel in a four-way match. But 2 of them are from Texas, so there you go. At the end of the day, Dustin Rhodes ended up rolling up Daniel Garcia to get the win and become the new TNT champion rather. This one went 15 minutes, 45 seconds, and the match was fine. Crowd was kind of dead for it. I think it was the fact that the crowd knew like the matches that were coming. So I think for like a lot of the stuff that they kind of didn't care about, they just kind of like sat on their hands, just kind of waited for the big stuff, because they did come alive for the bigger stuff, as I talked about a little bit earlier. But yeah, Dustin Rhodes gets the win, and the crowd was kind of dead for most of it. Good moment for Dustin to get a singles title win here. It's kind of like the old wrestling adage: if you have to do a late substitution, then you put the babyface over, so the crowd kind of goes home happy. And that was probably the case here. I would suspect Kyle Fletcher was supposed to win this match if it was just a singles match against Cole. I would not be shocked if Dustin Rhodes holds this for a month, if that, and Kyle Fletcher ends up beating him on a future television show to kind of get things back on track. So a little bump in the road on the way, I believe, for Kyle Fletcher to hold singles gold in AEW. Then we kind of turn it up a notch here as we kind of get to one of those first big matches of the night, where we have the tag team match. The Young Bucks taking on Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland. The stipulation: Young Bucks putting their EVP titles on the line, while Swerve and Ospreay can't challenge for the title for a year if they lose here. Big entrances for everybody involved. Will Ospreay gets another Assassin's Creed tie-in. Swerve Strickland had JoJo Offerman, Bray Wyatt's widow, former WWE announcer. She sang "Ain't Nobody" from Shaka Khan, and that was Swerve's old indie theme song. So I think the presentation was a little awkward because it was not really like an entrance for Swerve. She just kind of sang the song, and then Swerve came out to his regular song, and then the Young Bucks came out on a boat, and then Justin Roberts read this obnoxiously long speech about the history of AEW and how important the Young Bucks are to it. And then we finally got off to the match. 25-50, the babyfaces ended up getting the win, Swerve and Ospreay. So they, dethrone the EVPs, and they are able to challenge for the title whenever they want, I guess. This was a really good match, probably best one up to this point. That's not saying a whole lot compared to what was on the show prior to this. Kind of that Ospreay special where there's a lot of fast-moving, choreographed-looking sequences and a lot of insane kickouts of a lot of finishers kind of stacked on top of each other, and Ospreay still is able to kick out. He kicked out of something plus an EVP trigger, which was a little insane. and kind of over the top. But match itself was good. Crowd was a little quiet at the beginning, but once the kind of action kind of picked up towards the end, the crowd was definitely into it. So really good match. And this definitely kind of kicked off kind of that second half, like beginning the second half of the show, where it's like, okay, some of the early stuff is fine, but now we're starting to get to the meat and potatoes of the show, to where it can actually kind of be good, and this is feeling like AEW's biggest show of the year. Then we get the women's casino gauntlet match. Athena ended up getting the win here at 27 minutes. The participants in total were Chris Statlander, Megan Bain, Willow Nightingale, Ty Mello, Tekla, Julia Hart, Queen Aminata, Mina Shirakawa, Athena, Thunder Rosa, Siri, and Alex Windsor. Once again, not a whole lot in the names of big surprises. Suri did make her AEW debut. I don't know if maybe it's a debut, but she's kind of like, she had a vignette earlier in the week, and now she's, here, and it looks like she's going to be in AEW for the foreseeable future. And this match also, I think, was a little too long at 27 minutes. You could have shaved 10, 15 minutes off of that, just like the men's match, but it was shorter. There was a little bit less of the everyone stand, or everyone except for the two people who have spots planned just rest on the outside. There was a lot more action kind of going on inside the ring, outside of kind of the spotlighted wrestlers that they had. Harley Cameron made her return with her little cat face mask because she has a broken nose. Her and Anna Jay kind of chased off Penelope Ford cartoonishly to the back, so they kind of canceled out. And overall, Athena, Mina Shirakawa kind of had her moment. She was kind of attacking people and, wrestling, blah, blah, blah. Athena, she, got a big pop. I mean, both Athena and Bandito, the two ROH world champions, got really big reactions, to be honest. Now, maybe that's just because they're in Texas. They had a ROH show on Friday. It's kind of the hardest of the hardcore AEW fans, so they're more likely to know ROH and maybe respect the talent of Bandito and Athena compared to the average, Dynamite or Collision goer. But, it was a good sight to see that Athena was able to kind of get the spotlight here, and she got the win by pinning Mina Shirakawa with her finisher, the underrated Athena, I might say as well. She gets the win, so she has a future world title shot. I don't know what this means because, we saw her in the Owen. She wrestled. She had a really good match with Mercedes, ended up losing, had a few kind of one-off multi-women tag matches in the past month. And they talk about how she's the longest reigning ROH champion, like ever. And they don't really give her anything much to do on Dynamite. They just kind of keep sticking her back on ROH, and I keep hoping that they have more for her to do on Dynamite because, God bless her. It's cool that she's a champion in ROH, but let's be honest, no one really watches ROH. And I think she'd be much better suited on the AEW roster. And we will see if this is the case, if maybe this is just another one of those one-off Athena wrestles the champion on a pay-per-view, or it's a television main event. I do not know. Gonna have to wait and see on Dynamite and Collision to see exactly how this stuff's gonna play out. They didn't specify exactly how this works. I know Tony Khan talked about it in the press conference that this could be a cash-in scenario, or it could be a call your shot scenario. So I don't know, how these Gauntlet world title shots are going to plan out, but it seems as though they're going to kind of nail that down in the next coming days and maybe announce it on Dynamite. Then we had the tag title match, three-way, the Hurt Syndicate defending against Jet Speed, Kevin Knight, and Speedball Mike Bailey, as well as the Patriarchy, Christian Cage, and Nick Wayne. It was a match. It went on for quite a bit. FTR was at ringside. They were doing commentary. They were just kind of like doing their own bits and just kind of, trying to pop themselves and just saying like dumb shit. It was a good time. It was kind of fun. This match, I think, once again went on, I think, way too long compared to the match, or compared to the show as a whole. Hurt Syndicate ended up pinning Christian Cage after Cage kind of got pushed into FTR multiple times. So Hurt Syndicate retain. They move on. Who knows what they're going to do? It seems as though they're setting up a Hurt Syndicate FTR match for the titles, because FTR did point out that like they haven't lost at all this year, and yet they still haven't had a title shot. That would be a heel scenario, but if push came to shove, I would assume the crowd would cheer the Hurt Syndicate over FTR. But the Hurt Syndicate have gone more the heelish route recently, especially since joining up with MJF. Then, after the fact, FTR kind of, circled Christian Cage. Nick Wayne was there as well, and then Nick Wayne attacks Christian, and FTR hands Nick Wayne the chair, and they're going to go do a concerto. But then, You Think You Know Me hits, and Copeland comes out, or Adam Copeland, Edge, whatever you want to call him, comes out, and he did the Jeff Hardy special. He was like, all right, Christian, I'm going to go help save you, buddy, but I got to get my shit in first. And he went to one end of the stage, pandered to the crowd, went to the other end of the stage, pandered to the crowd, did give like one little point at the heels in the ring and say, you scallywags, you don't do it. You don't move. Okay. But I'm going to do my stuff right now. That was kind of funny and kind of tone deaf, to be honest. But finally, Copeland comes out, clears the ring. Christian's still selling, gets up, and Copeland says, you got to go find yourself. Didn't say the big F word. He said find yourself. So, clearly teasing a Christian Copeland reunion, but they are not going full balls to the wall quite yet. They're going to tell the story of Christian trying to rehabilitate his character, because Christian, however long he's been a full-blown heel, the past 2 years, it feels like probably, he has been the meanest guy in AEW and probably in wrestling in terms of the stuff he said, talking about dead people, talking about Nick Wayne's mother and father, and, everyone. Yeah, Christian has not been a great guy recently. I don't know how much you can, get past that, but kind of for better or for worse in wrestling, it just takes like one moment or one kind of promo, and I think the crowd will just get back on Christian's side, just because, he's a legend and we like him and we want to see, Edge and Christian get back together. So there will be a story told, but I just don't know how believable it will be, just based on the stuff Christian has done in the past. Then we get into the 3 main events. First off, it was Timeless Toni Storm defending against Mercedes Moné. This was for the AEW World Women's Championship. This one went 24 minutes, 10 seconds, and Toni Storm ends up getting the win and retaining here. Really good match. I would probably say this is my favorite match of the night, best match of the night. It was just a straightforward wrestling match. Yeah, there was a little bit of shenanigans with Luther on this outside, a little bit of shenanigans with Toni Storm and Mercedes kind of mocking each other, but for 90% of the match, it was just these two women going in there, wrestling, trying to beat each other, and they did a really good job. Now, that being said, I wouldn't say this is Mercedes or Toni Storm's like best matches. Maybe definitely Mercedes. This probably would be Mercedes' best match in AEW, or in her career, frankly, but it was still a really good match, and the crowd was into it. They were clearly behind Toni, clearly against Mercedes, and Toni won, and my prediction was, I think you should go with Toni here. I don't know what you do with Mercedes as the belt collector. She gets all the titles, then where do you go from there? You just have her, like, slowly but surely lose all the titles eventually? Like, yeah, it would be cool if you do, like, the Ultimo Dragon picture, but besides that, I just don't know what you do with Mercedes Moné with all those belts. So, good move, good decision from Tony Khan to go with Toni Storm and continue her being the champion. Both ladies had really good entrances. Mercedes came out with the Texas Rangers, like, cheerleaders, and she came out in a lowrider with a big old train cape thing. Then all the wrestlers, all the people that she has defeated on her way to holding all of these belts. Shout out Kairi Sane. She made her she made her name on the list on that train, as well as Britt Baker. But yeah, Toni Storm did another film noir thing, and she came out and they kind of updated the filter to where it was black and white, but also highlighted all the red aspects on the show, on the screen. And yeah, Mercedes or Tony hits like 3 consecutive Storm Zeros. Yes, once again, it's not. It's I have to question myself. It's a Storm Zero or Storm Breaker. It's a Storm Zero from Tony Storm. Mercedes kicks out of that. Then she hits a super Storm Zero off the top rope or off the ropes to get the win. Phenomenal match from these two ladies here, and it delivered. Like I said, the show was long, but the stuff that needed to be good was good. Then we get Kazuchika Okada taking on Kenny Omega, the dream match, the rematch we've all been waiting for. Winner takes all to unify the the Continental and the International Championship to become the AEW Unified Champion, even though there are multiple champions still on that roster, but I digress. This one goes 30 minutes, 32 seconds, and Kazuchika Okada gets the win after some interference from Don Callis. I thought the match was really solid. It was definitely not in the same vein as their classic matches 7-8 years ago, but I mean, no one was going to expect them to kind of pull off that type of match. Now, could they? I don't know. But were they? They weren't going to do something like that. So yeah, the match was, I thought it was a solid match. They had that kind of typical Okada, really slow in the beginning portions of the match. So it's kind of like, if it like settles you, it's like, okay, they're going to go pretty slow for the next 5 to 10 minutes, but they're going to pick it up towards the end. And they did pick it up. Kazuchika Okada gets hit with the I am all over the place. Omega hits Okada with the One Wing Angel, and then Don Callis pulls the referee out the ring. Should that been disqualification? Probably, but that's just, I guess, dumb things that wrestling logic is. Then we got another referee comes out. They wrestle for a little bit. Don Callis gets involved as well, and Okada hits the Rainmaker and pins Omega and wins 30 minutes, 32 seconds, as I said. Match was solid. Could have done without the Don Callis interference. I don't know if this sets up a rematch later down the line. I mean, they have Forbidden Door in August. Politically, I don't know if they want to have Okada take on other New Japan guys. So if it was just Okada and Omega in a rematch, that would kind of make sense. But this was kind of the match to settle the score and for everything to be finished. But the finish didn't exactly lead to that, just because it has, gives Omega an out that if Don Callis and Okada weren't together, Omega probably would have beat Okada. That's probably what they're going to do. I would not be shocked if we get another match between these two. I'd say the next calendar year. Maybe they hold it off till next year. Maybe not next year's All In, but they run it back at another show, like early 2026. I don't know. But yeah, solid match, but not as good as it could have been if both these guys were in their physical prime. But neither one of them, I was looking at Okada's, I was more looking at what Okada was going to bring to this match, and I'm still like not 100% convinced that Okada can be what he was in Japan in AEW, just because, he's a little bit older. He got his money. He had his great matches in Japan. So now he's going to come to the United States and kind of coast a little bit. This definitely was not a coast. I mean, he still got his shit in and, had some good moments, but I'm still kind of like, yeah, I am feeling like Okada is in Nakamura mode right now. And he's like, he might turn it up a little bit for a match like this, but outside of that, I don't think he will. But then main event time, what we've all been waiting for: Hangman Adam Page, Jon Moxley, Texas Deathmatch, AEW World Title on the line. Hangman comes out to some lady who's a professional whistler. Just one small little quibble, not with this, but just in general. Wrestling promotions love to like break out the live performances on stadium shows. Frankly, I just don't think they ever sound good, because it's not going to sound as good as the, music in a studio, perfectly, pitched and orchestrated and everything like that. And for like the show, the biggest show of the year and everything like that, it does kind of take a hamper on it, because just me personally, just play the music I know and love, and let's fucking just get straight to it, because sometimes when they sing the song that you know, it doesn't sound as good as the regular theme song. But I digress. But Hangman Page comes out, and he comes out to his old theme, the babyface theme, the theme song you heard at the beginning of this podcast. The cameraman goes over to the left side, which is the heel side, but he quickly pans over to Page, who comes out of the babyface tunnel on the right-hand side, which I thought was a great touch. So clearly telling the story that Hangman Page is in a non-kayfabe sense, he is a babyface now. He is back to, he's back to cowboy shit, and he's here to save AEW and all that other good fun stuff, whatever cliches you want to say. So I thought that was a great moment, a great entrance from Hangman Page. Wasn't wasn't over the top like a Kenny Omega, like the Kenny Omega entrance with the Druids and the light, the flaming Omega sign, or the Will Ospreay Assassin's Creed entrance. It was pretty simple, but the story it told was beautiful. Moxley comes out. They had a souped up, I think it was a Bronco, and they drove him out to the ring. And he just kind of had his regular entrance that he has, walking throughout the stadium, and they just get on to it. 35 minutes, 55 seconds, longest match of the show. And this is I'd say a controversial one. It is going to be a divisive one. This was, the biggest match that AEW could put on in terms of, the stakes and the story that they've had. And I thought the story was fantastic. I thought, tell the story of Hangman Page, like I said, turn it into a babyface again, and then having all of the, the demons of the Death Riders past come out, with Darby Allin, sending in that video from the top of Mount Everest. Then he rappels down from the Raptors. Bryan Danielson comes out with his Blue Panther mask on, and with reports of WWE saying stop doing the yes chant, and he just immediately just does the yes chant in the middle of the ring, was hilarious. Will Ospreay comes out. He gets Pillmanized, so he gets sent off. So basically all the weapons against the Death Riders have been used, but then Swerve comes out. These two guys who've hated each other for years, Swerve, hits, I forget who it was with the chain. Maybe it was Claudio, but he hits Claudio with the chain, gives the chain to Hangman. Hangman, they give each other a look, like, okay, we might not be, best friends, but we're gonna set our differences aside, and we're gonna, take these guys down for the betterment of the company. And Hangman, punched Moxley, hung him over the top rope with that chain, tapped him out. Huge pop from the crowd. And, Hangman, visibly emotional, struggles to get the case, which I don't know if that was a shooter or a work, but I thought that also kind of added to the kind of anticipation and the feeling of wanting to see this title get, showcased for the first time in 7 months, first time since October. Another great touch in the match was that the side plates of Bryan Danielson was still on there. They weren't Moxley's plates. They were Danielson's plates, which would make sense if Moxley won the title, and they just threw it in the briefcase, never to be seen again. So that's the positives. The negatives would be just the match itself. Now, if you don't like, blood, guts, gore, you're not going to like this match, because it is the AEW specialty of completely, over the top. I mean, Hangman Page was stabbing Moxley in the head with a fork like less than 5 minutes in, and we had blood. The visuals of Moxley sitting up in the corner, I forget exactly when it was, but someone else was attacking Page while Moxley was kind of recouping, and Moxley just looks like absolute shit. Just blood, like not dried blood, like pure dark red, still coming out of his skull, blood just dripping down his face. It was an intense visual. It looked amazing, but it was an intense visual. And it's one of those things that, like, if this is not your style, and if you don't like this and it turns you off, I don't have anything like any defense against it, because like I get it. There's people who don't like this. I'm not the biggest fan of this style. I'm more of like if it has the story behind it, I'm willing to watch it like this one does. Now, if it's a local indie with like 200 people or 100 people in the crowd, and these are just the two guys who have death matches and they're just out there to mutilate themselves for, a hot dog and a handshake, that's the stuff I don't like. But when it's on a bigger stage, or at least has a compelling story behind it, I'm more okay with it. Now, this one didn't have, it had glass, it had a bed of it had the bed of nails, it had dangerous stuff, but it didn't have like some of that cringeworthy stuff that I think the Page and Swerve stuff had, like the syringe through the mouth, yeah, that might not hurt as much as going through real broken glass, but the visual just is not great. But yeah, so I thought story phenomenal, fantastic match. For me personally, I thought the match was really good. I thought it was, if we're going to do star rankings, like a 4+ star match for what it is. But this is AEW. This is, they're trying to be a challenger brand. WWE, frankly, is not in a great spot right now. AEW would benefit from kind of, taking that lack of momentum and building on themselves. But a match like this is going to turn off a lot of casuals and a lot of people who aren't used to that blood, guts, and gore. Now, maybe they can get past that. And this is kind of I think a hard reset and a kind of a big moment for AEW, because, now they have a new champion. They're kind of past the Death Rider stuff. The EVP stuff with the Young Bucks is gone. So what are the storylines going forward? I do not know. I don't see a clear picture. Obviously they have MJF waiting in the wings. Page and MJF could be a really good match if they want to go to it right away, or if they want to hold off until maybe Full Gear in November. I think that's usually when it is. So maybe that'll be the case there. But overall, long show. Way too long. But it was still overall a good show. We do grades on the Bullet Cast, so I'll give this one a grade. I'm going to, everything's on a curve. So, the AEW curve, but then also gets the curve of this is their biggest show of the year. I'm going to give, All in Texas, I'm going to give it a B+. The show length was a little bit too much. The undercard, I think, under-delivered, but the upper card definitely kind of carried its weight for the most part. Had some quibbles with Okada Omega, but the main event, Okada Omega was good. I really enjoyed Tony Storm Mercedes. The tag match with the Bucks and Swerve Ospreay was fantastic. So the stuff that, as I said before, the stuff that needed to be good was good, and it delivered. So like I said, I'm just kind of going to go in not chronological order, but in order of how I watched it. Then we had Saturday night's main event, basically happening at the same time as the very end of the show of All In. Now, I did not watch the first two matches. I saw, clips of Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. Randy won. And then this is going to set up a Randy Orton Jelly Roll taking on Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul tag match at SummerSlam. Whatever. I don't have I don't really care, to be honest. Then we had Solo Sikoa defeat Jimmy Uso for the United States Championship. Did not really see this. Didn't see any clips of it on Twitter either. So it seems as though maybe there's really nothing too much to say. But the big storylines coming out of this show were the last two matches. Unfortunately, it was kind of for the worse, because Seth Rollins took on LA Knight, and LA Knight surprisingly beat Seth Rollins, but that does not seem like that was the plan. Seth went for a springboard, two springboard moves, and it seemed to be he tweaked his knee, goes down immediately, talks to the ref, Paul Heyman. LA Knight quickly hits the BFT, gets the pin, and all reports indicate that Seth suffered a significant knee injury. T's and P's to him. It just sucks. He has the Money in the Bank briefcase. His little faction was kind of the focal point of Raw. They definitely had plans for him. It wasn't clear what those plans were, but it does suck. But as you know, I'm not the biggest Seth Rollins fan, and this could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise. Now, you never want anyone to be hurt, but if this forces Seth to be off TV and kind of forces, either Paul Heyman to be the focal point or maybe even Braun Breaker to be the focal point of that group, I do personally think that is a better option than Seth being the lead guy on Raw every single week. I just, people like his entrance, but I just think once you get past the entrance, people don't care too much about Seth Rollins in the ring and his character work. And this would be a perfect time, even if Seth was healthy, to promote and put Braun Breaker on the forefront. And I think that's what they're going to do. I would not be shocked if they do some sort of chicanery to where Paul Heyman is able to just kind of give the title the Money in the Bank to Braun Breaker, and Breaker ends up, cashing in and winning. Then that could maybe set up a babyface turn for Seth when he comes back, and he, goes up against Braun and Heyman. Whether, that could be a WrestleMania match if his knee holds up, or it's a SummerSlam match, or whenever, Seth's knee is healthy. So that's kind of my thinking. Yeah, it sucks that Seth is hurt and is going to be gone for a little bit, but I think this at the end could maybe be a good thing for Braun Breaker, because he should be something, and I think he was going to be something eventually, but I think this kind of expedites the process. Then we had Gunther and Goldberg in the match for the World Heavyweight title. This was presumably Goldberg's retirement match. They were a little cheeky and didn't really full-blown plaster it everywhere. They kind of gave it lip service, but they didn't really say yeah, this is his last match. He's gone forever if he whether win or lose. But which kind of made me wonder, maybe Goldberg will win. But nope, it did not happen. Gunther beat him in 15 minutes, 20 seconds. I would assume that match got elongated because of the Seth Rollins injury. And the match was exactly what you thought it would be. Gunther kind of having his way with Goldberg getting some spots in. We had a ref bump. Goldberg kind of has, hits one last spear and jackhammer, has the visual pinfall, but there was no referee to count. Then at the end of the day, Gunther just chokes out Goldberg, gets the win, retains, and then they just immediately go to commercial, which in that 15 minutes, there was 2 commercial breaks in between. So from what I saw, it seemed good. It was not a barn burner by any means, but no Goldberg match really is. Then Gunther chokes out Goldberg. Then they immediately go to commercial after that. I am watching this on Peacock, by the way, but I think it was the same on NBC. Then they go to commercial, come back. Goldberg is in the ring with 20 different people, including DDP. Doug Dillinger's in there, which was a nice little touch for him to be the guy to knock on Goldberg's door one last time. A whole bunch of other people. Goldberg says a few words, and they just cut him off, and they go to another commercial, which, I get it. You have the thing for NBC where you have the hard out at the top of the hour. But, you couldn't do something for, the Peacock or the international viewers on YouTube to where you could have just kept the camera on him and, watch the feed. But whatever. I'm not the biggest Goldberg fan, but still, I thought that was kind of a shitty way to kind of have Goldberg's, final moments, not aired. And maybe they'll do, the Hollywood, in perfect Goldberg fashion. Maybe in the Hollywood Havoc 98 style, they'll air Goldberg's, speech on Netflix on Raw today. But yeah, Saturday's main event, these are just very, low-level television cards, a lot of commercials, in total, what is that, 16 or 27, 39, so yeah, less than 50 minutes of actual wrestling on a 2-hour show in total. It is what it is, baby. So then I watched Great American Bash Sunday morning. Frankly, not a watcher of NXT, so I just kind of, passively watch it, or not watch it, but, I'll tune in for the big shows and see what's going on. So in terms of the storylines, I can't give any in-depth analysis on what this means for the future of NXT. All the matches were fine. Nothing I thought stood out in a good way or a bad way. Ethan Page, Ricky Saints for the NXT title, with Falls Count Anywhere match. I thought that was probably the best match of the night, but it was just kind of a lot of gimmicks, and they kind of just brawled all over the center stage. Page hits Ego's Edge off the stage, through a table, and Paige gets the win there. Everything was relatively short. Longest match was the main event, which was Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe defeating Fatal Influence, JC Jane and Fallon Henley in a tag match, which, interesting that was the main event, but maybe that was just kind of them, giving the girls a little pat on the back for Evolution going into on Sunday, since, Jordynne Grace and JC Jane did have their match. So maybe that was the thinking that in that way, instead of giving it to Ethan Page and Ricky Saints. And also the babyface ended up winning. So maybe they wanted to end the show with on a good note, on a high, with the babyfaces winning, unlike having Ethan Page retaining in the main event. So Ruka defeated Izzy Dame for the NXT North American Championship. That match was was fine. Obafemi and Inamura. That match, two big meaty men slapping meat. Josh Briggs kind of got involved without Inamura really wanting him to, so that kind of sets up maybe a rematch down the line. Obafemi kind of straight up told Inamura backstage that he will give him a rematch later down the line. So overall, just a solid kind of 2 hour, 15-minute show from NXT. As someone who doesn't watch, nothing offensive, but from what I've seen or from what I've heard, a lot of the stuff that I probably would not like of NXT is mainly on their television show, and kind of like the way they produce things and the way they kind of shoot, fake angles and, fake camera shots and all that other stuff. But the wrestling in-ring wise might not be like top tier, but for being mostly developmental wrestlers, it is perfectly suitable for what they are trying to do there. Then the final show of the weekend, we had the Evolution 2 taking place once again in Atlanta, Georgia, at the State Farm Arena. This was a solid show. I will say, honestly, probably the best show out of everything. Just because it was a tighter show, there wasn't as many commercials. Now, I don't know if that was like a conscious decision. Maybe it's because this wasn't a big show for WWE, frankly. This wasn't their, a SummerSlam or WrestleMania, a regular pay-per-view, to be honest. Not throwing any shade at the women, but I think that kind of did help them, because I didn't feel like we were getting overly bombarded with advertisements, pre, post, during matches. We weren't, I thought it was kind of a refreshing take that we weren't getting so many fucking commercials on a WWE show. Started off with the triple threat match, Becky Lynch, Bayley, and Lyra Valkyria for the IC title. This one went 16 minutes, 30 seconds, probably best match of the night. 3 veterans, 3 workers in there. And as much as I, didn't like the build to this match, I knew the match itself was going to be solid if given the time and given the story in the ring. And they definitely did deliver. Becky Lynch hit, not a stolen pin finish, but Bayley hit the belly to Bayley, Bayley to belly, I think it's Bayley to belly, on Lyra. And Becky kind of rolls through Bayley, hits her with a cheeky little, roll up, and gets the win there. So Becky continues her reign as champion. Pins Bayley, so maybe that sets up a rematch between Becky Lynch and Lyra, because I think people care more about Bayley than Lyra, but the story throughout has been Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria, so maybe they'd run it back at SummerSlam, because SummerSlam's 3 weeks away, so you got a quick turnaround to do these matches. And I'd kind of be shocked if they did another triple threat match. So I think they're going to go maybe with Lyra and Becky, but I really did enjoy this match. I thought it was a solid match, kicked off the show, and best match of the night, in my opinion. Then we had the NXT Women's Championship match, JC Jane and Jordynne Grace. This one only went 10 minutes, 30 seconds. Was good while it lasted. I thought, both women in there were doing good work. Obviously, Jordynne Grace, professional. She knows what she's doing in there. JC Jane, I think, has gotten better in her role as champion, gaining more confidence, gaining a little more experience in that role. They did have Fallon Henley, Jasmine Nix, and Blake Monroe all at ringside. Fatal Influence did get involved at the later stages. Blake Monroe did thwart them. Easy for me to say as I just kind of spit in your guys' ear right there. And then they did a little ring around the rosy bit where JCJ reversed a whip, whatever you call it. Oh my God. I don't even know. What the hell? I keep wanting to say clothesline. Irish whip. There we go. I know wrestling, guys. I'm not that dumb. So she Irish whipped Jordynne Grace into the ropes, and Blake Monroe, clear as day, hits Jordynne Grace intentionally with the title in the back. And then Michael Cole just like clearly was like, oh my gosh, that must have been an accident, when like the story obviously was Blake Monroe turning on Jordynne Grace. But yet Michael Cole either didn't get the memo, or the memo was to play dumb. And he did look dumb, because it clearly was Blake Monroe doing that intentionally on Jordynne Grace. And then JC Jane hits her finisher for the win. Bam. She retains, and looks as though we are getting Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe in a little side quest on NXT. Blake Monroe did get the pin on JC Jane on a Great American Bash. So maybe that's going to play into Monroe, wanting the title shot against Jane, and maybe she gets the title, Blake Monroe is, and then Jordynne Grace is on the chase, and then that maybe builds to Jordynne Grace winning the title. But at this point, I mean, Grace has been there for so long. I mean, I don't think she should have been in NXT to begin with. I think she should have always just been on the main roster, because I think she's already a fully formed talent. And I mean, Blake Monroe is as well. So I mean, both those women probably shouldn't be on the on NXT, but if you're gonna have some, talented wrestlers on there, I'm not gonna complain. So yeah, the match was fine. Finish was kind of dumb, but that's kind of the course. That's kind of what NXT does. They kind of do like dumb finishes and kind of swerves for the sake of swerves, and like it didn't make too much sense. Like, why did Blake Monroe stop the heels from attacking Jordynne Grace just for her to attack Jordynne Grace at the end? I don't know. Then we get the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match for the women's titles. Judgment Day, Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez defending against Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, Soruka Zarya, and the Kabuki Warriors, which is Asuka and Kairi Sane. This match only went 10 minutes, 50 seconds, so it was a little bit of a sprint, a little bit of a cluster with everyone kind of getting their shit in. I think the surprising story of the match would be just how over and how popular Charlotte Flair was in this match. They were a "We Want Charlotte" chant. They were massive pop when she got into the ring. It seems as though kind of the storyline of Alexa and Charlotte kind of being reluctant friends has clicked with some people. Now, you never want to overreact to one crowd reaction, because, a crowd that went out of their way to go to an all-women's pay-per-view might not be, the majority of what the average WWE fan base will see. So I'm not saying you got to push Charlotte and Alexa to the moon, and, Charlotte Flair as a babyface against, Tiffany Stratton as a heel, run it back one more time, and Charlotte, conquers Tiffany and she wins the title and she has a, year-long reign with it. No, but I think you do kind of take note. It's like, okay, maybe we do have something here with Flair as, kind of that veteran who maybe got a little, bad shake in the past, and now people may be coming around to her. And, maybe this was, she did write an article in the Players Tribune about talking about, kind of the struggle she's had recently, and, her divorce and her knee injury and everything that's taken place, and, Reed and, things like that. So maybe people did hear that and kind of, were sympathetic towards her, and maybe she's kind of, people are trying to get back on her side, because it did feel as though she was taking the booze and the lack of interest personally, which was never a good thing. Like, you should always, like, yes, there might be some people out there on the internet that don't like you, quote unquote, personally, even though they don't know you personally. But we shall wait and see what they're going to do with Charlotte and Alexa Bliss. The finish was, or like the kind of the big moment was Charlotte saving Alexa Bliss from a spear from Zarya. So clearly they're setting up, Bliss and Flair kind of being buddy-buddy now. Soruka, they did very much play into the fact that she had to wrestle 3 times in 48 hours. So she was the one to end up taking the pin on from Raquel, which made sense. I thought maybe Zarya would be the one to take the pin, but because she's the kind of lowest person on the totem pole here. But it would make sense for Ruka to take the pin just because she did wrestle so much. She wrestled on SmackDown, then on Great American Bash, and then here on Evolution. So just kind of going about with the Judgment Day still as tag team champs. So everything is hunky-dory in Judgment Day land right now, but we all know that is not going to last too much longer. Then we had the women's world title match, Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus. So TNS taking on TNS. This one only went 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Even though it was short, it didn't feel like a sprint. They kind of did their stuff, got in, got out, was not too crazy and too ambitious in the spots. There was really no point, I thought, where there was a believable near fall for Trish Stratus. So it was just kind of like a showcase, almost felt like an exhibition, to be honest. Two baby faces going up against each other. Stratton ends up getting the win and retains her title. Really not much here in terms of like what this means, because this was very much a one-off match. But now we have to wait and see what happens, because Jade Cargill seems to be in the wings waiting for her match against Tiffany Stratton at SummerSlam, and Jade Cargill beat Naomi in a no-holds-barred match with Bianca Belair as a special guest referee. This one went 11 minutes, 10 seconds. Once again, kind of a Jade Cargill special where, clearly they kind of had like the spots planned out, and the spots that they had planned out looked pretty good. The stuff in between was fine. So a lot of kind of bells and whistles, and, the storyline does, the storyline counts for that, because, Naomi like pushed Jade Cargill off a, whatever you call it, off an elevated surface down on a car, and could have killed her. And so Jade's definitely trying to, get her revenge on that front, and Jade Cargill gets the win, and kind of quizzical that, okay, Jade wins. Naomi just loses like that. Are they done? Beef's over? Well, it seems as though maybe Naomi is not going to be on SmackDown all that much longer. But we will talk about that at the very end. Then we had the Battle Royal with a world title shot at Clash in Paris on the line. In total, we had Tatum. This is out of eliminations, but Stephanie Vaquer, Lash Legend, Tatum Paxley, Izzy Dame, Ivy Nile, Natalya, Maxine Dupree, Candice LeRae, Jane Parker, Kalani Jordan, Julia, BFAB, Michin, Zelina Vega, Alba Fire, Lola Vice, Piper Niven, Chelsea Green, Nikki Bella, Nia Jax. So 20 women in total in this match, and Stephanie Vaquer gets the win by eliminating Lash Legend. It's a battle royal. It's kind of hard to say if it was good or bad. Nikki Bella got a really good reaction. You could see a lot of people in the crowd dressed up as Nikki Bella, had their Bella Army signs and all that stuff. Vaquer also got a strong response. No surprises, no legends, nothing shocking in terms of who was in this match. It was pretty just straightforward. Probably like the one consistent story of the match would be, Chelsea Green and Nikki Bella interacting a lot. So maybe that sets up a singles match. Maybe it sets up a tag match with Brie at SummerSlam or on Raw. I don't know. I thought I saw something that Chelsea Green and Nikki Bella are going to wrestle today, but I don't know if that was just clickbait or if that is actually going to be a thing. Just kind of quickly going through here. It does not look like that has been announced quite yet. They did announce that there's going to be a gauntlet match to determine Gunther's opponent at SummerSlam, which is CM Punk, Jey Uso, LA Knight, Penta, and Braun Breaker. Once again, seems as though maybe all these Seth Rollins involved plans have kind of been tossed up in the air. So who knows what that'll entail. Maybe LA Knight. It's just kind of weird that LA Knight is involved in this match because he's not a Raw guy. He is a SmackDown guy last time I checked, but who knows and who cares about brand, not supremacy, brand correspondence. I don't know. I've been talking way too long. Yeah, damn near going an hour. We're almost finished here, folks. But yeah, Stephanie Vaquer wins by eliminating Lash Legend. Then after the fact, Stephanie McMahon comes out and she tries to speak to Stephanie Vaquer in Spanish, which was funny because there's a meme. If you've seen it about, Stephanie and speaking Spanish. And yeah, anyways, I'm not going to go deep into the meme because we're going way too long, but she did the thing. So yeah, Stephanie cuts a good promo in Spanish and in English. She talked about how English might not be her second language, but is not her first language, but wrestling is her first language. So that was a good little line there from her. And, good to see Vaquer getting the spotlight. If it's going to be, her and maybe Naomi in the Clash in Paris, I think that'd be a good little thing for Stephanie to maybe win, to kind of have her little moment in the sun and kind of have her go on her merry way. But yeah, I don't have any qualms with the match itself. I like Stephanie. I think she's clearly one of the top women's wrestlers they have there, and you do not want to mess with her. So give her the shot, give her, a win on this big show, and let's see what they can do with her. Then main event time, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky for the women's championship match. This one went 26-22, and Io and Rhea absolutely killed it. They were on the verge, I think, of something very special, and I thought they were doing a really good job. They had a ref bump, so they went out to the outside. Io did a fucking splash off some road cases. She was like 20 feet up in the air, probably not that high, but that's what they said. Then we had what was it? They did something off the top rope. Spanish Fly. No, that was on the outside. They did something off the top rope or something where there was a double down. Then Naomi comes in and cashes in her Money in the Bank contract. So she gets in there. She goes after Io, and Naomi pins Io to now become the world champion. I was very surprised that they went down this route. We all kind of thought, maybe Naomi will cash in on Tiffany, so we'll get Naomi and Jade at SummerSlam. Nope, they went the other route, and they're going with Naomi and Naomi over on Raw with the world title. I kind of just wish we stuck to a one-on-one match and just had Io and Rhea have a fantastic match, and whoever won. And if it was Io retaining, I'm fine with that. And if it was Rhea getting the win finally over Io, I would have been fine with that either. But no, they went kind of the shocking route, and Naomi got the win. And this, no quips with Naomi, because I think Naomi has been doing pretty good work. I mean, probably the best WWE work of her career in terms of like the heel stuff she's doing right now. But I wasn't like the biggest fan of this decision, but it seems as though Triple H does like to do kind of these moments and those finishes where I wouldn't say this is a shit finish, because it's a moment, it's surprising, and people were shocked that Naomi ended up cashing in, but it also kind of felt as though they were like really involved in Io and Rhea, and they wanted to see a finish of the match, and they didn't get that. So, just kind of reading the room on how the crowd was reacting, they weren't going like, jumping up and down, screaming for joy and like insane crazy that, some of these other cash-ins have been. But, we're going to have to wait on what the plan is, because it is a quick turnaround. Maybe they do a full-blown triple threat match with Naomi, Io, and Rhea for the title. It would be kind of, I don't know if I'd say it's weird if they just have Naomi win for 3 weeks and then lose it. So I think she'd probably retain again. But overall, good match, good show in general. And I got to say, Evolution, I'm going to give Evolution an A-. I thought it was, a really good, tight, packed show. The opening match and the it was bookended by two really good matches. Some quibbles with the finish of Naomi cashing in, and there was no terrible match. Everything was under, outside the main event, everything was under around 15 minutes. So they didn't really, outstay their welcome. So I thought it was a good time. Let me know what y'all thought about this weekend in wrestling. I didn't watch ROH. I heard Takeshita and Bandito was a fantastic match as well. Follow us on the socials. If you're the Bulletcast, if you're on Curveballs and Sure Shots, Curveballs and CS. We'll be back here this week for all updated thoughts on news and notes, the All-Star break, the All-Star game, home run derby. Maybe Dom has got to give me a little kissy in the upcoming weeks, but we'll have to stay tuned and wait for that. Thank y'all. Big hugs, tiny kisses, goodbye, good night, and bang.